Recognizes my neighbor from the great state of Kansas, Dr. Marshall, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chairman. And I guess I would start by, you had a standing joke with my pastor, and every week you would ask me, does coffee cause cancer this week, Doc? And I would say, well, I hope not, because I usually had a cup of coffee in my hands. So I just continue to be amazed. Now I'm reading this, and I see that IARC once upon a time actually said it was a carcinogen, so that shocks me. I'm also a little bit surprised to see that the United States has given $48 million to IARC, which is located in Lyon, France. A beautiful place by accounts of all the paintings I've seen of that area, but I'm not sure why we're spending American dollars over there. You know, to go to my question, I'll start with Dr. Pastoor, the first one. Obviously, there's a big difference between hazard and risk, and on its webpage, IARC contends that it does not make a judgment about risk. So IARC says it does not make a judgment about risk. However, on the front page of its monograph, it states that it evaluates carcinogenic risk to humans. This seems really misleading. I'm a biochemist, I'm a physician. You can go down the dirt here a little bit if you want to, but if it's not talking about making judgment regarding to risk, saying something carcinogenic is exactly declaring it's a risk. Can you help me understand this better?
Representative Marshall, thank you for that question, because that's core to the testimony that I'm giving today. And that's that the difference between the word hazard and risk is absolutely crucially important. Because if a patient comes to you and says, well, what should I do about caffeic acid or caffeine or whatever they're asking you about, you have to put that in context. Minimize your exposure or avoid it altogether, whatever it is. What IARC does is stops with half a loaf, half of the description. They're just saying it's carcinogenic and leaves it at that point. It is not a risk assessment. It's simply a hazard assessment. That's not useful. It's actually injurious. It's also, I think, irresponsible, and I think it's harmful to the American public.
You know, one of our jobs here in Congress is to prioritize the dollars we do have on research. And in Kansas, we have big issues with the sugarcane aphid, with the wheat mosaic virus. I mean, to me, prioritizing monies for those would seem to take precedent over this. I'll go to Dr. Lowit with my next question. I think just to hammer this point home, explain to me the EPA. So I'm new to Congress. How does the EPA make its assessment? Is it hazards only? When you determine what chemicals are safe or not, do you use just the hazard assessment, or how do you do it?
So consistent with federal statute, EPA does risk assessment. So we evaluate both the hazard and the exposure and then evaluate them together.
Does that often lead to, are there examples of some chemicals that are a hazard only and as opposed to a risk as well?
As a general rule, no, EPA does risk assessment, not hazard assessment.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back.